Ladies and gentlemen. Alright, I think Prof. Kaya and Prof. Mesa, even Prof. Kabudi had alluded to the international conference that we held over 2 days. It was Tuesday and Wednesday here at Moses Mabhida. And I think when we had concluded with the conference, we had a brief discussion about today's workshop. And I asked Prof. Mesa, what would you think would be most pertinent for us to discuss? And he said, well, tell them what you think is research from your perspective, from your experience. And normally when I'm asked that question, I usually answer it with 3 points, and that comes into 3 small questions: the why, the how, and the what. And when I talk about the why, I'm actually referring to the outcomes of the research. One needs to consider what you ultimately want to achieve at the end of the research. What impact are you looking for? And I'm not looking at your promotion because you've got now a PhD. I'm not looking at a title, a fancy title to put on your business card. I'm actually looking at the impact, social impact. How have you impacted on the livelihood of your people? How have you changed policy? What have you done? What can you do with your research? You may have a very defined vision for your research. You may have a very vague idea of what you hope to achieve. But if you have that general idea, it will inform or influence some of the early choices that you're going to make in your research. And those early choices is like a selection of a topic, as Prof. Kaya has gone through very extensively or comprehensively this morning. If you know what you want to achieve, it will be very easy for you to identify what your topic would be. If you've identified the problem and this is how I'm going to solve it, you'd know what your topic would be. It also will influence who you will have as your sponsor or your supervisor. You need someone that's knowledgeable. You need someone that thinks the same way as you, who has the same value systems as you do. You don't want to be swayed or pressured into doing something that does not agree with you at the core of your being. It also might influence where you study. At which institution do you register at? Is it a pioneering institution like the American University of Sovereign Nations? Is it a leading institution in your area of interest? And again, do they share your values and principles? So those are some of the key issues that will be influenced if you know in advance some of the key outcomes that are going to be out of your research. I mean, we're also talking about ethical issues. If you know who the subjects, I'm saying subjects, now the people that you'll be involving in your research. And I know in indigenous knowledge systems, we don't like to talk or refer to the people that we work with as subjects. That's some of the key jargon that we use when I used to do science. Subjects, who's your subjects? What is your sample? In indigenous knowledge systems, the people that you work with, the people that you are doing the research with, are very much a part of it. They're in fact, their name should also reflect on your thesis, not just yours. I'm using an example there of PhD in maths. There was a young man who had registered in the School of Maths. That meant he wanted a PhD in maths. But in fact, his study was informed by the School of Life Sciences, where they were doing parasitology. And in fact, it was even more informed by the government's program or intervention to encourage farmers to treat their cattle for pests or parasites. And they were trying to find a way to encourage the farmers to dip the cows. And he designed a model, a mathematical model, to showcase the cultural value in fiscal terms, in monetary terms. How much is your cattle worth in a cultural sense? In order to encourage them to go and look after their cows according to the agricultural or that program that the government was putting in place. And the benefit of the impact was most of the communities had gone through and dipped their cows and now were able to have cows that were living longer. But by showing the appreciation for the cultural value and being able to showcase it in a maths model is outstanding. I mean, it's astounding even. So that shows you someone that had vision. He wants to do something in the maths discipline. He went across disciplines to the Faculty of Science and Agriculture, and he even went into the social sciences and humanities. So this is how big one needs to be thinking, especially in the type of sector that you're working in. You need to think broadly and see how to bring in different elements. You're working with so many colleagues, all of you are in the room. So try to find ways of networking and seeing what other elements can you be bringing to your topics. When it comes to the how, it's the most difficult question because it all relies or depends on you. And I know Prof had mentioned earlier, Prof Kabudi, about self-discipline. Over and above being humble, one needs to, you have to drive yourself. If the supervisor does not, or the sponsor does not allow, doesn't give you deadlines or goals, you need to impose those on yourself. I want to be able to finish my proposal in 3 months, if that's the deadline. And even if it means 7 or 20 drafts later, please put yourself to it. It needs to be done. The other element I wanted to bring up was the issue about innovation. There are about 50 of us in the room, Fezile says. What happens if all of us want to do the same topic? That's the we've got a big population in the country. What happens if we all end up with the same topic? How is your topic so innovative? What makes you different? What makes you stand out? If we all are here from the electricity department, what topic are you going to do? You all can't be doing the next generation of energy or electricity or biofuels. What are you going to be doing? How do you bring, again, the social element into it? How do you bring the cultural element into it? And we've got to get out of that box that we are so used to in the conventional way of doing science, conventional way of doing research. And then the other element, which I'm sure we're all in the working world here, about transferable skills. You've taken the opportunity, which I'm very much impressed with, about coming to a workshop of this nature. What are the skills that you're gaining through your research? You're not only gaining it through the work environment, but how are you finding ways of getting these skills that people are looking for in the workplace that you can gain through your research, you can gain through your field work? How do I multitask, or how do I capitalize on some of my work case studies and use that as part of my research? And then lastly, it brings me to the what. The what is more about the subject matter, and I'm a bit biased. Prof. Kai mentioned the word bias this morning. I'm biased towards indigenous knowledge systems. And because I realized much later, after I had done my research, that there was so much more indigenous knowledge that I just wish I captured in my research. But that's the nature of research. It's always ongoing. You cannot do everything in a go. And I think that's the biggest lesson one needs to learn. But the content, like I mentioned, indigenous knowledge systems. There have been countless conferences on environmental governance, on food security, on climate change. So what made our conference so different in the last 2 days was the fact that we had the element of indigenous knowledge systems in it. We had knowledge holders, we showcased them. Our conference was opened by the Amakosi, by Nkosi Mavunda. So it wasn't opened by any political leader or anything to that effect. No other prominent person was there. It was opened by him. And he spent 2 days with us, which was most inspiring. We also had a session of where we could translate what was happening. But we also tried to showcase the fact that indigenous knowledge here in South Africa is not the only type of indigenous knowledge. It's not an African thing. It's occurring in BRICS, it's occurring in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and everywhere else in the world. And we're trying to showcase to South Africans as well that our situation is not unique. We're not the only ones dealing with food insecurity. We're not the only ones dealing with climate change. And how other countries deal with it, it's important for us to engage. We're living in a global community. So we also need to find other experiences. So the young lady dealing with cement or concrete, she's only looked at the American or European situation. What happens in Mali? What happens in South America? What happens in all these other countries? Looking for other cases. And then I know on the program I've been put on as traditional ecological knowledge, and I just basically want to go through some of those in the next few slides. Just if someone asks you what is traditional ecological knowledge, you basically are talking about how communities or people have had a relationship or interacted with their environment and devise management strategies to cope with changing conditions and situations. But we've also been able to read some poem that someone Granny is singing to us. It had knowledge in it. So when we're dealing with indigenous knowledge, we must also think about narratives, other ways of communicating. And if we are illiterate before, if I didn't know how to write, I may have drawn some things, or I may have made a game. And that game is very important. It may have taught me some values and some significant elements. So bringing and drawing those things would be important. I, as a Hindu or practicing Hinduism, we have sacred trees, sacred rocks, sacred rivers, sacred things, that some people may consider to be a weed is not necessarily a weed to me. So I have to grow it in my place. I may have to think of how the municipality can perhaps have an area where we grow Siringaberry trees. They stay there, so whenever I need them for my prayers, I can go and collect them, not hunting on the street looking for this particular plant because people are busy spraying to kill them off. But they're actually quite hardy, so they stay around. The other element that one must think about is value systems. And I think Prof. Mesa has been talking about that quite extensively today in terms of environmental ethics. And I think we must all go back to looking at where and investigate what type of value systems do we have that taught us how to interact with the environment. What have we abandoned along the way? And again, the role of belief systems and languages, as I've mentioned before, where it imparts an identity. When you say your name, I think the gentleman here introduced himself with a long name. Here we go. He started from the beginning and he had like 2 sentences later he stopped introducing himself. That is showing someone that is proud of who he is and where he comes from. And then there's this word that I first learned from Professor Kaya, ontology. I tried to just hide under the table when I heard it the first time. I had no idea what that was. And it's basically how you see the world. It will influence how you interact with others. It will influence how you interact with your environment. And basically it will inform some of the practices that you have. So I think there are a lot of scholars in the room. Every one of you is an emerging scholar, as Prof. Kaya has mentioned. You need guidance, but more than that, you need initiative, and as Prof. Kabudi had said, a lot of self-discipline. No one else is going to hold your hand, and as much as you're going to ask questions, sometimes it may feel redundant, but you need to ask them anyway. And if no one is giving you the answer immediately, tell them, as Prof. Kabudi had said, come with your say, look, I've checked online, this is the information I've been given, what can you add to that? So someone can see that you have made the effort, you've taken the initiative to go forward. I've written 50 pages or I've written 20 pages. Can you see if I'm on the right line? All right, thank you so much.